Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. And it's Shirley with Spirit of Matter, and a little bit of a spiritual eureka or teaching just came up. And again, I'm going to say this is for collective, very, very collective, because this one involves Sedna. Right now, Sedna is in Gemini, and Pluto is applying to trine her again. And this has to do, the information that came up, I was talking about Inuit and tribal information. Okay, but the information that came up is basically the people who planned to do colonialism, enslavement, and invasion. They plan this because they are inbred. That means these are families where they procreate with incest, okay, or with very, very close relations, and the procreation is by very particular bloodline, and but what they don't keep is willing consent. And this is the conjoining of the genetic proximity and the negligence for willing consent is basically causing them to acquire wealth in ways that are not wealthy. What do I mean by this? I previously said that for the most difficult mental ailment, that is psychosis, what helps is housing first, independent of your ability to work, so you can walk on the soil, grow food, and have your root chakra provided for, because this is how people get ungrounded. Okay, it's basically they get disconnected from the body, and then they experience it as intrusive when it's done because of trauma. And this is why we have psychosis, okay? And open dialogue, so they can speak and be validated and believed, okay? And so when they begin to speak, be validated beliefs, those psychosis experience become channeling, become supportive, yes? And then, yes, if they want to do something where they're passionate with their lives, then to be supported on this, even if it's different from what society, usually the jobby job and so on. So this is the most difficult mental ailment, is psychosis, and this is the solution. Housing first and open dialogue. Housing first is basically not just housing, but support, but independent of their ability to work, so not required of them. And so for the natural volition to do something that is productive, that is beautiful, is come from within and is their creation, this is healing. So this is already the second, the relational chakra, okay, the creative, and so on. And this is important because the people who take over land and deprive people of housing and deprive people of growing their food, okay, these families, they are doing this because they are operating from trauma. They're operating from being inbred, being conceived with incest, sexual trauma, and the too much proximity, okay? And so they need to have biodiversity, but because they come from very archaic notions of spirituality, very closed, then many of them don't know this, and they operate in this way because they want to keep the wealth for centuries. And maybe centuries ago, that's what they did, but we know today that being inbred is actually causing the immune system to be more sensitive. Okay, so yes, of course, when they tend to healing, the body is basically housing first without independent of ability to work would be correct for them. It's just that they are always in fear that somebody will be taken over, and that's how they dealt with it. Basically, cause themselves trauma, unfortunately. But if they do colonizing and so on, then they cause others trauma. And what the teaching came is wherever there are cultures that are breathing in that way, okay, so they're very paying too much attention to the bloodline, not doing biodiversity, not paying attention to will and consent, okay, yes, for such cultures, always in risk of invasion, because there is unfortunately a bit of a spiritual match between the culture of the tribe, and that can be Inuit, that can be Native Americans, that can be Native Africans, Asians, that can be so far away from what you think is wealth families, of whichever name you can name, and the names that you cannot name even, that are doing this. But the commune, what is common, is basically that the children are not conceived with will and consent, and that there can be even child sacrifice even more susceptible, because these elite families, they sacrifice sometimes the first child. So it's very important. And another thing is that when they are inbred, okay, for the no biodiversity. And again, will and consent is crucial. It's not about, sleep with just somebody who is from different culture, from different bloodline. No, you have to also have will and consent for the baby to be ushered and to grant wealth, yes, to the family. And so, because this creates a bit of, parasitical type of life, not because the bad people or the parasitic, or not at all. It's because the immune system is sensitive and they can't be with nature so well. Okay, the cure is actually, yes, to step on soil, to be with nature, to slowly integrate into society and so on, and to practice will and consent. Yes, but because there's a match for these practices, then this is how we get more susceptibility. Nobody is to blame for bad things that happen to them. Also, we want to have a change of those things that create basically psychosis, and then deprive of people of the roots, and then they deprive of people of their soil, of their land. Okay, it doesn't happen in one day, but this is why we get this, and this is Sedna, because the story for Sedna, she was a young girl, she didn't want to marry, and then either she tried to run away with someone from another tribe, but he also was abusive, or she was sold, and her father was attacked when he was trying to save her, and then he cut off her fingers, and she slipped into the ocean, trying to hold on to his ship, and she slipped into the ocean. She became the goddess of the sea life. And basically, the tribe was not accommodating for a free man, a free woman, for a free child, that doesn't want to marry, that want to be free, that if they are in relationship, they want to be also free in a relationship, okay? And then we know today that for tribes that have high suicide rate is because incest, because domestic violence, because rape, yes. And this is also causing risk for invasion. Okay, when I see today, when I hear people saying, oh, that Trump offered to buy Greenland and this and that, first of all, it's not Trump. Trump is presenter. He does what he's told by whoever secret society and people he's associated with in order to be a businessman. And so for when we change this type of procreation, when we practice willing consent, we basically go off the grid, off from those type of practices, okay? And this is important for cultures to change that overall. And this is the when you want to, let's say, free people, and now it's Palestine, or Ukraine, or Congo, or Afghanistan, okay? Then the most important is to practice, yes, biodiversity, willing consent, and allow people, for even if they don't want to marry, they're still accommodated and it's still okay. Those things, when you have a person like this, a free person, and is accommodated for, you bring blessing to your village. Your village, you bring blessing to your village. Even one person that said in the whole village that is not marrying, but is still having housing first, is still having, is accommodating, is allowed to be what they are and to do what they are, already the whole village gets a blessing. If you're working with sedna, you could consider it as a part of appeasing sedna. If you are just thinking of in terms of spirituality, this thing is very important, okay? If you're religious, you can think, okay, God is testing your ability to be kind to the stranger, okay? I know from Hebrew scriptures, I know from Israeli lawyer, Zionist lawyer, yes, that was actually bringing people to court for incest, but there was the case that she couldn't take on because for fear for life, okay? And once she said in Hebrew, "Ve'ahavtem et hager ki gerim הייתם בארץ מצרים," okay? And you would love the Gentile because you were Gentiles in Egypt, okay? And so if you're religious, you might see it from that point of view. For people like that, they basically, the God tests you that you can love them, that they are accommodated for, and the God tests you to see that you can provide for them. And if you provide for, it's like they provide for themselves usually, but if you don't interfere, okay, if you don't tell of them all kinds of things, if you don't try to bring them to your place, don't do these things, you give them to be the right to be who they are, then basically from a religious point of view, you will get the blessing. The blessing is not to try to convert them to your religion, but the blessing is to show your God that you love the Gentile, and allow them to be who you are, because this is your confidence in God, because this is that you don't, your belief in God does not depend on other person's opinion, but rather that you stay true and that you accommodate for a person to be who they are, because this, if you're religious, this is a divine being, okay? It's God created them, and so yes. And if you're atheist, it's just live and let live. Very easy. Don't be like those ayatollahs, okay? You say you're a free person, of this, of that, okay? Then don't act like the ayatollahs. Respect people, huh? It's very easy for atheist people. Yes, but if you come from tribal society, this might be more taboo to you. Yes, of whichever, you can maybe contact your ancestors and they would very likely there was always probably somebody in your lineage that was this person that never married, or that even the reason that they never married is because they came to bring a deeper connection into relationships, and so they couldn't marry unless they found the person, or maybe they divorced, or maybe they had a child outside marriage. All of these things, surely you had in your lineage. And if you take the wisdom of the lineage, then yes, you get this. Yes, so this is important. So whoever you are, if you are watching this and maybe you are afraid, whether you are indigenous and you are afraid, so I want to bring you this spiritual teaching. I want to remind you that those families, those wealth families, that the way that they live is through inbred and not an incest, and not biodiversity, not willing consent. And the less your tribe lives like this, the less they are likely to be encountering with them. Again, if they are, they're not to blame for what happened to them. Okay, nobody's to blame for what happened to them. What I'm telling is point of interference. Okay, nobody, the people for 7th of October that were raped, they were not to blame that the watchers, the women watchers, would not be believed. They were not to blame for that. Okay, but we also know that if they listened to women, and if they didn't send women to be raped by Palestinian prisoners in jail, and we can only tell for our side what they did. The other side is for Palestinians to tell, and for us to believe them. But for our side, if they listened from within, even to the war veterans of 73, then invasion would not happen. But it's coming from above, from these communities. For like Waxman Fund, they are promoting pedophilia. Okay, they're working in those type of ways, and for a lineage of people, entire army that did not disobey legal order, you understand that it's a lot of thinking to do. Why weren't these female watchers vouched for? There's a lot of inner thinking to do. That is for Israel. Where did we not listen to our women? Where did we not listen to children? Yes, where did we not listen? Okay, and then perhaps if we would accommodate for these people, yes, within the land, would be easier. For when people begin to say, and it's true, or people from those places, they want to come here, they want blue ID, they want this, they want that, would be easier to convince when we wouldn't have these big embarrassments where an entire army does not disobey legal order, and 8 hours invasion happens, nobody does anything. Okay, so I can only speak from where I come from, and I say that so that you will not feel like I'm condescending. I'm speaking for you, eye level. Those families that do these invasions, they are inbred, they are not respective of willing consent, and they sacrifice children, and they have sex with children and torture children. Okay, wherever community where this happens, is like those families are connecting with this culture. Okay, and even that you know that this is happening and this is wrong and this is happening in your society, if you do whichever religious practice, when you contact your ancestors, ask to heal this. If you just tend to it, you will see a lot of gates of wealth will open up to you, and you will see this corruption diminishes. Because what the healing for schizophrenia, the hardest mental disease, where people say crazy, housing first and open dialogue. Okay, independent of your ability to work, to know that you have a place here on the soil and a house and you are seen and you are believed. For even if your story is difficult, you are seen, you are believed, you are accommodated for within your community, even difficult to hear. People recover from psychosis, they become channelers. Not necessarily healers, maybe they become artists, maybe they become scientists. Channeling is everything, it's just connection. And as for to stay for everyone to have soil, then we need to have willing consent and allow for biodiversity to occur and allow for those people to say no. Okay? Even if they're single, even if this, or people who are single or don't or have no children or this or that, okay? For allowing this to be is in connection and validation that opens for if a person is afraid from relationship or from children, then if they're meant to bring children, then this gate will open up for them, not through being invasive, but through being accepting. So this is in deep reverence of sadness. We're turning from Saturn day to slowly Mercury night. And Sedna in Gemini, Mercury, Gemini ruled in Gemini, and Sedna is in Gemini. So in reverence, yes, to Sedna. And I hope that wherever this means, if you are recovering, yes, from such experiences, yes, know that you're not to blame for what happened to you. If you're recovering from invasion, okay, maybe you're watching, maybe you're Palestinian watching this, or from Inuit or from indigenous community watching this, yes, if recovering from such things, yes, also, you're not to blame for what happened to you. The people that were murdered, that were killed, you're not to blame for what happened to them. It's for us to heal that within our own lineages, for allowing all of us to live more, because our answer to whether it's occupation or invasion or Shoah, okay, Holocaust, or genocide or democide, or all of that, our answer is to live more, not to live less. Because of more willing consent, better relationships, better connection. And this, I think, is a good message, yes, to send out. So thank you for watching.